All right, y'all. It's your boy Brian Forbes, and it is time for the Black Factor. Here we go again, y'all. Look here, we got a hell of a show tonight because I got some real interesting perspectives that I want to offer. You know, we deal with a lot of. I don't even want to call it fake outrage, but we deal with a lot of anger in this country where certain things are concerned, and sometimes rightfully so. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about some of that anger, and you're going to have to ask yourself, is this anger misplaced? Is it the kind of anger that we should all have? Um, the question remains to be seen, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, starting out, first let me say, if you're on the YouTube station, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the share button. But if you're a parent in America, particularly if you're a parent in an urban city or an area where we all have the problem of worrying about our uh, youth, if you will, we're always concerned about whether or not well, let me put it this way: safety is always a concern, especially these days with everything that's going on in society and dealing with everything that comes with worrying about as a parent and some now grandparents with our children being in public. Um, this show revolves around guns, the use of guns, and particularly, especially, the use of guns as it pertains to our youth. This is a double edged sword, y'all. I'm going to just put it like that. Here's why. Now, what prompted me to do this show in particular? Oh, let me right quick say also, let me welcome my Oh So Smooth Radio family. Thank you for tuning in and checking out the show. Y'all don't forget, we got to support black media because the only way you're going to get some of these perspectives is through people like myself and those who broadcast these types of shows, because the general public, America, is not going to offer you these perspectives. So what ended up happening was I was prompted to do this show because of a couple of photos, and I want to show you these photos just to get some idea, because I want to find out where everybody's head really is as it pertains to some of these things. Now, to start out, let's look at this first photo. Now, I want you to look at this photograph and think about how it makes you feel when you see it. Think about the idea that we are here in America, and this appears to me, I don't know the location of this particular photograph. I don't know what city it's taken in, but here is what appears to be a couple of young people, obviously beneath the age of 21 or but now let's be reminded also that in most states in America you are allowed at the age of 16 to handle and have what are referred to as, or particularly in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, what are referred to as long guns. Now, if you're committing a terrorist act or there's something going on, people often like to point out the fact that it's an AR-15 or an AK-47 or whatever the buzzword for the time is to make it appear to be so lethal. With the time we're in the time of mass shootings as well. So let's also remember that here are some children, or what I'd like to refer to as children, holding what appear to be some very lethal firearms in a display as part of their prom photography before they go to their prom event. Now, that's one. Here's another. She's wearing a very nice dress, holding what appears to be a handgun. He is also holding what appears to be an assault rifle with what appears to be an assault shotgun on the ground. Now, again, good evening, Kimberly Scott. I see you. Thank you for tuning in. Now, let's keep in mind, again, What sorts of feelings do photographs like this elicit from the viewer, from people who are basically seeing these photographs and having certain thoughts? Now, it would appear, of course, that sometimes when we're talking about people who have had children, who have lost children to gun violence or anything of that nature, there would be some um, hesitancy, some levels of disgust, or whatever you may want to call what you feel when you see something like this. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm disgusted at the way he's dressed and he's on his way to a prom. But that's just me. I'm old school. I'm probably more disgusted by his clothes than I am the firearms. But that is beside the point. Let me continue here. Now, on this next photograph, it's just her standing there with an assault pistol, two guns on her dress, and one in each hand. Now, we may feel some kind of way, but here's what ends up happening. We end up in situations where people immediately say things like, that's disgusting. What are these parents thinking? Why do they have to display weapons? What is really going on? Is this what we're doing now? The responses are endless. But here's the thing, y'all. And this is where this stuff gets a little funky. Here you have the other young man with a couple of assault rifles. Now, I'm guessing, and I don't know if this couple were together or whether they were in two separate incidences or not. But here's where I want to go with this. We could be appalled by what we see. Let me also say that I'm going to post a video that I did 2 years ago about guns, black people, and the American Constitution. I encourage you, I thoroughly encourage you to watch that particular show. I'm going to post a link to it after this show. I encourage you to watch that show because there's some things in there that you absolutely need to know. If you have any concern whatsoever about firearms in this country and where we're headed with them, I would like for you to definitely watch that show. I'm going to post the link in this video later on, and I'm going to post it on my page. Now, we'll sit here, and where I'm going with this show particularly has more to do with our conditioning and our mindset than anything. Because you may think what I'm not going to do is bash what I see here, and I'm going to tell you why right now. Take a look at that picture there. There's a young lady on her way to prom with a shotgun and her cowboy boots on the back of a pickup truck. But the only difference here is that she is a different race. The funny thing is, here's another photo of a couple on their way, obviously, to prom, both of whom have shotguns thrown over their arm. Here we have a group posed with assault rifles, hunting rifles, a Confederate flag, ladies and guys alike. My question is, now here's a group of young ladies all holding assault rifles. Do these photographs solicit the same reaction that you had when you saw the black children holding the assault rifles? See, for some people, that's going to be true. For others, it's not. And here's the thing. Yet another couple, and I'm flashing these photographs across here for the benefit of making the point that I'm going to make with this show. Now, this particular photograph was taken all the way back in April of 2013. And here you have, 6 young ladies, all of whom are holding weapons, one with an assault rifle in one hand and what appears to be a .357 Python in her other hand. Again, different race than the pictures that I originally showed. Do these photographs solicit the same reaction that you had when I initially showed you the pictures with the black children holding these weapons. Now, and as I'm going through for my Oh So Smooth Radio family who cannot see the visuals, I am flipping through several photographs here of prom participants, all of whom from this point, from the first initial photos that I showed, are white. Now my question is, at what point does the reaction become different? See, we tend to put or make ourselves the poster children for particular ideas and reactions when it comes to certain things. And I think that we should be very careful about pointing a finger when we see those young people, those young black people in particular, with these weapons. See, I read a thread that went with those first pictures that I showed with the black children. And in that thread, it said things like, oh, great, now the police know who's got the guns. Oh, look, a future serial killer. Oh, why do they have to do this? See, the reactions when you read the threads attached to the white children holding the guns are dramatically different. Now, that comes with the conditioning that we have received throughout our history in this country. And that is where I have the problem. So the question becomes, should black parents teach their kids to shoot? I'm going to go out and I'm going to say yes immediately, because as a black parent who taught his children to shoot and how to handle weapons and firearms, for me, it was a necessity in my ideology. Why? Because I have always been a firm believer that it is better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. And how can it be a bad thing to bestow certain knowledge on your children? Now, some people will say, well, why do my kids need to know that? Well, here's the facts. The children who don't know are generally the ones who end up the victims of accidental shootings, playing games with guns, and there's a list that goes on where that is concerned. And my belief has always been that when you take away the fantasy, when you take away the novelty or the excitement of the taboo of, ooh, look, a gun, then suddenly there's no excitement when one shows up mistakenly, deliberately, or out of nowhere. Ask yourself this as a parent. If your child, grandchild, was walking home from school and someone who was up to no good, some criminal activity or that type of thing, were walking down the street and they were running from the police and they threw the gun down, and just so happened the police didn't see him throw it. Well, on the way home, your child or grandchild picked that gun up. Ooh, look, a gun. Would you be more comfortable and confident that that child understood what it meant that a gun was laying there on the ground, that they more than likely should not touch it, who to report it to, how to report it, and not be fascinated with the fact that, ooh, look, I found a gun, let me stick it in my bag and run home with it? Now, there are multiple ways a scenario like that could play out, but wouldn't you be happier if your child was aware of what the ramifications of having that firearm near them or knowing what to do in that case? Wouldn't you be more confident in their safety? I would. So then the question becomes, who is at fault when we continue to pushed the narrative that black people with guns are automatically viewed as criminal, are automatically viewed as a threat, or are automatically treated some kind of way because of that their possession of a firearm. Just in case you didn't know, everyone who possesses a firearm is not a criminal. Everyone who's black is not a criminal who possesses a firearm. Unlike the narrative that we have bought into for so long, based upon the stories that we've heard and the scenes that we watch on television and through the movies and things of that nature that always depict anyone black with a gun is up to no good, that they are a criminal. Yet we watch white people in the movies back in the day and they ride down the street and they have their shotgun in the back window and nobody blinks and bats an eyelash. Why is that? See, we buy into these narratives so that when a young black person poses with a firearm, like I showed you earlier, our immediate reaction is to recoil and to think, oh my God, that is terrible. But not when we see the white children with the same weapons pose for their prom, as though we are the poster children for all things bad. See, even though we may not, and don't get it twisted, I would never encourage or even allow my children to take pictures for their prom with guns. That message is unnecessary, but not for the reason that other people feel that they shouldn't do it. I personally think it's tacky as hell. Not that they couldn't, but I think it's tacky and it doesn't go with prom. For that reason, not for the reason that I don't believe that they should have access or not be able to understand what to do and how to use them. So there's a difference there because I feel the same as those of other persuasions who have allowed their children and allow their children to handle shooting competitions, hunt, go to the range. The list goes on. Why is it that we have bought into the narrative that if you have a gun and you're black and you're young, that you automatically are up to no good? And I need y'all to understand, until we stop allowing others to dictate our existence and allowing others to have control over our narrative or control over our image, then we're going to stay in trouble for a very long time. Now, many of you know that some years ago, I wrote this book, The Black Factor. In this book, I discuss the image of black people. That particular chapter is called The Image Factor. And it has to do with us taking back the narrative of who we are and about our existence right here in this country. Now, I'm going to backtrack. I'm actually about to not contradict myself, but I'm about to go in another direction. While we as black Americans have the right to bear arms, should we? Can we, without suffering greater than those of other colors? See, this is where the real question comes in. The logistics of owning firearms and being black in America is a little different than white America. But will that ever change if we don't do something about it? If we don't begin to change the narrative? Now, I think that we should be training our children about firearms, about the handling of firearms, about the laws surrounding firearms. But the problem here generally is that we will not educate our children on many of the other things in life that need to be taught. Now, we are not the poster child for that either, because just equally, white children are also not taught many things. Like, for example, look at all of the people who are what I refer to as civilly ignorant. Civil ignorance are those who believe, for example, that the election was stolen. Civil ignorance encompasses a large majority of people in this country that are Caucasian, black as well. They are angry in many cases that black people have the right to vote because, according to them, we're stupid, we're ignorant, and a bunch of other adjectives. But the fact is, many of them are equally, if not more, ignorant. In fact, I'm going to say more because there are far more of them. So we know that their ignorance is incredibly deep. We see it every time they rear their racist heads, for those that are racist, to do or say something against another group of people simply because they look different from them. But I still believe that we have a duty to educate our children about the Second Amendment in this country. Now, here's a funny thing. Some white folks are a lot like some people who go to the Bible, and rather than understand the stories in the Bible with clarity, because very few people have actually picked the book up and read it from cover to cover, most of these people also have never really read the Constitution. They really don't know what's in it. But if you say anything about a gun to a civilly ignorant person, one of the first things you're going to hear from them is about their Second Amendment rights. They may have gotten a bit of peace in here and there, and their pastors, if you will, their leaders who believe in the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, will use those small passages within that Second Amendment to keep them riled up and understanding that no matter what, you can't have my guns. You're going to have to take it from my cold, dead hands, as they will say. Now, as a citizen of the United States, yes, we should all have the right to own, possess, and carry firearms. But we also know that some of us are less likely to be respected in that regard, because there is a disconnect between the two. Let's take Philando Castile as one example. Philando Castile, for those of you who don't know who that was a young man who was murdered by the police in Milwaukee. I believe it was Milwaukee. Yeah. Where he was riding in a car with his girlfriend, who was pulled over apparently for a tail light or some other traffic infraction. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was a few years ago. And the officers, when pulling her over, rather than deal with her and the traffic situation, began to question the passenger. A man sitting there in his seat, minding his own business, asked, did they have any firearms? Mr. Castile answered yes, as a matter of fact. And in doing so, offered to provide his permit, his legal right to carry a firearm on his person concealed. And as he went to do so, the officer then murdered him, shot him to death in cold blood. Why? Because he was in fear of his life. Why was he in fear of his life from a legal gun owner? You know why? because of the narrative, because of the black person with a gun is automatically a criminal ideology created by them to justify our murder, to justify the slaughter of black people based on ridiculous feelings and notions created by white supremacy and racists, which automatically, in my mind, makes that officer a racist. Because if he knew any better and wasn't civilly ignorant as a police officer, an officer of the court, if you will, he would never have taken that man's life and been so afraid of this black man with a gun who legally had the right to carry this firearm concealed based on the laws of that state and this country. His rights were violated by an officer of the law. And in fact, I believe that officer got away with that. So yes, there is a difference. But unless we all do something about that to make that change, not wait until, see, we always wait until something bad happens. We always wait until the shit hits the fan before we jump up and do something. We wait until we have a group of angry protesters who are mad because somebody got murdered by police, and then we take to the streets. Yet when it's time to vote, where are we? Oh, I don't vote. Oh, I don't do that. It ain't gonna do no good. Inaction has never been a defense. Not doing, black people are the only folks I ever seen in my life who think that not doing something is a way to stop something from happening to them. Civil ignorance. See, it goes both ways. Don't get it twisted. See, the difference with us is that our communities are over-policed. Black skin is criminalized. Black people, since the beginning of this country, have been dehumanized. These are all of the issues that we're faced with that those of the other persuasion, are not. Yet they'll tell you, well, you're an American, you should be able to do this, that, and the other, but they've never walked. They've never spent 5 minutes in a black man's shoes. They've never had to deal with the mentality of an individual who has grown up all of their lives believing that black people with a gun are dangerous. Legal or not, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yet, a Kyle Rittenhouse can walk around up there in Kenosha with an AR-15 and say that he's protecting property and kill 2 people and then get away with it. Philando Castile couldn't even sit in a car and mind his own business legally carrying a firearm without being murdered. But now, here's where I need y'all to really pay attention. Understand this. Now, I did a show some time ago, and I'm not going to lie, I can't even find it myself, y'all. I'm looking for it. But I did a show some time ago where I actually discussed the Second Amendment. I discussed it to the degree that you need to understand why the Second Amendment was put into the Constitution. See, the whitewashed version, and don't pardon the pun, the whitewashed version is that the gun laws in this country from the very beginning were put into place because of black people. Now, y'all probably say, oh, that's crazy. That don't make no sense. Oh, it makes perfect sense. The first gun control laws were put into place on this continent in early 1620. Okay? That was before the Constitution, right? They were put into place to, well, it was actually 1 year after the beginning of chattel slavery. Now, if you know your history, you'll know that chattel slavery, and chattel slavery meaning forced slavery, violent slavery, not indentured servitude like a lot of Irish people like to try to claim they were slaves, which is a basic lie. After the beginning of chattel slavery in 1619, right? 1 year later, 1620, the first gun law, the first gun control law was put into place. Now, understand this, and I'm going to go back into that in just a minute. The Second Amendment in the Constitution, they'll tell you that it was there to have the right to bear arms and maintain a well-regulated militia. Well, let's go deeper. Why did we need a militia? Well, in that time, we didn't have a what we refer to as standing army. So the militias were to come together at any particular time in order to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. But the enemies were more domestic than they were foreign. They'll tell you that the Second Amendment is about states' rights. Here's the fact. States' rights, the only reason there was an argument about states' rights and why that became an issue in the Constitution, written into the law, was because the southern half of the country wanted to maintain slavery. By the way, most of the signers of that document were slaveholders. And when I say most, I'm talking maybe a couple who didn't have slaves. The intent was that the South allowed the maintenance of slavery and did not want the federal government to be able to step in and say, no more slavery. So in other words, now the states had the right to say, hey, look, well, we want to maintain slaves in this state, so this is what the people here want, so y'all can't come in and say nothing about it. Anybody who tells you otherwise, everybody want to talk, when these white folks pull up their Confederate flag, talk about, oh, it's our heritage. It's your slavery. It's your white supremacy. It's your hatred of anybody non-white is what that is. Period, point blank, full stop. You can, I'll take all the smoke. You don't believe it? Hit me up on this show at any time. We can have that conversation, and I promise you, if you don't have answers, I got answers. And I promise you this. If you can't back your answers up with facts, don't call here. Because what I do is factual. These are all, everything that I'm saying here, and I tell people all the time, don't believe nothing I say. All you got to do is look it up. It's that the information is out there. We live in the information age. The internet is a powerful, powerful tool. Now, that Second Amendment allowed for slavery to be maintained. The reason for the militia, supposedly to fight against foreign and domestic enemies. Well, here's the deal. It was really the domestic enemies that they wanted to fight against because they didn't want no other state or the federal government to be able to come in and say no more slaves. Y'all got to stop that. So they were able to defend themselves. Aside from that, the militia was put into place in order to do what were called patrols. Every male in most southern states over the age of 18 had to have a military style weapon. And during that time, there were different, whatever their military style weapon of that time was, they had to legally own, they by law, they had to own one. Every man, black, white male over 18 had to own one. And they had to, at least once a month, be a part of a patrol that patrolled the roads to make sure that no slaves were becoming a part of any insurrection or any type of revolt or trying to escape. I'm not making this up. That's what the Second Amendment was about. That right to bear arms and not be infringed is because they had every intent on protecting their right to maintain slavery. Okay? Now, it was about control, y'all. Now, I want you to remember this. No other place on this planet that has ever been colonized by white people, by the English or the Portuguese or any of those people in those countries who went around the world, Spanish, and got all over this entire marble and colonized these different places, they all used Guns. Period. Full stop. Every place on this earth that was colonized using guns. Do the homework. Now, the first gun control laws were put into place because of black people, and that was in 1620. Now, in 1619, the first slaves were imported into British North America in Virginia. See, remember what I said now, British North America, because this is the continent that they, of course, had conquered. Blacks and natives were forbidden to use or possess firearms unless they had a license to possess guns, shot, or powder, because back then, they had to use the muzzle loading type guns. But of course, we know, just like today, there was a time where they did everything in their power to keep the guns out of the hands of black people. This is the history of this country, y'all. None of this is new. This started in 1620. It is 2020. Do y'all understand how long this has been going on about guns in this country? Understand this one fact, and I'm going to give you right now. There will never come a time in the history of this country, while it is in its current standing, where guns will be banned. It will not, it cannot happen. That will be the fall of this country. Trust me when I tell you that. It is woven into the fabric of everything that this country is and is made of. And if you notice, every one of these states now is beginning to open up to the point where they're no longer even making you have to have a permit to carry a gun. See, they're making it now where everybody can carry a gun. They're even making it now where some criminals are even being reinstated to be able to carry. See, this is not going to change. Don't ever think in your head for 1 second that there's going to be gun laws. Oh, they're going to ban this. They're going to ban. They're not getting ready to ban nothing. Because without this level of control, they lose control of America. Y'all just watched that whole insurrection happen right there in Washington, D.C. Y'all watched all them guys run up in the Michigan Capitol armed. Y'all watched all of these things take place. They forgot to tell you about the part how the Black Panthers went peacefully to the California Capitol armed, and how the laws in California immediately changed when that happened in 1969. Okay? The whole idea in 1619 was that they keep guns out of the hands of those who had reason to fight for their freedom or were oppressed. That meant Native Americans as well as black people. Couldn't have no gun. Now, there was a time during that same time, let's see. Okay. Well, yeah. No. Here's the other one. In 1643 in Connecticut, and at least in 5 other colonies, y'all. Now this is 1643. Before 16. Okay. And at least 5 other colonies required at least one adult male in every house to carry a gun to church or other meeting to protect against attacks from Native Americans and to protect against the theft of other guns and firearms from unattended homes. So if everybody was out at church and all that type of thing right there, you need to be armed. You need to carry your pistol everywhere. Why? Because they were concerned about the Native Americans and the slaves. The 1743 law in South Carolina stated that these laws were to protect against insurrections and other wicked attempts of insurrection or Negroes and other slaves. See, again, every law just about that has the only law that I know of where gun control was concerned that got made in America that had nothing to do with black people was the one that they came up with, the Brady Bill, when Reagan got shot. I think it was. Yeah, I believe it was when Reagan, they attempted assassination on Reagan. The Brady Bill. That was the only gun control law that I'm aware of at this time in America that was ever created that didn't have something to do with black people. Now, at the time of the writing of the Constitution, black skin meant that you were only considered three-fifths of a man. And that eliminated any right for gun ownership, even if you were free in America. See, so think about it. Even if you lived up north where you were free from slavery, prior to the Constitution, you still were considered only three-fifths of a man, so you didn't have the right to own a gun. Now, out there in California, in 1969, right, the Black Panther Party went to the state capitol in protest. Now, here's what happened. They were policing their neighborhoods against police brutality, right? So in protest, they did a march where they went to the state capitol. And on the steps of the state capitol, orderly, peacefully, it's in the history books, y'all. All you gotta do is look this stuff up. I'm telling you, you ain't gotta believe me, just look it up. And displayed their right to bear arms, as well as their ability to let the world know that we are tired of being oppressed. Well, that's when they immediately came up with a law called the Mulford Act. Now, this law was created in response to what they called, what were armed patrols of the Oakland neighborhoods, and for policing the police. Now, the powers that be, see, you got to understand this. Here we go back to the civil ignorance. The powers that be created a buzzword for the civilly ignorant, and they called it cop watching. So in other words, a bunch of black people running around with guns watching cops. That's dangerous. So they came up with a new law in California which banned the use or carry of all firearms, which is mostly still in effect today. And guess who the governor was at the time? Ronald Reagan, y'all. Ronald Reagan was the governor when this particular law got put into place. And isn't it ironic that he also was the victim of an attempted assassination during his presidency? See, some things you just can't get away from. The thing is this, and I'm going to, like I told you earlier, I'm going to post a video that I did some time ago on the page for y'all. I want you to go and look at it. It's one I did 2 years ago. It's a very important video, and it speaks specifically of these things that I'm talking about today in regard to guns in America. It's actually an hour, I believe, and 43 minutes. It's actually a good video. I was watching it myself. But anyway, my point is this, y'all. We now live in an America where all things on some gaslighting are supposed to be equal. We know they're not. But at what point do we begin to live our life according to the way we are supposed to in this country? We pay the same amount of taxes as everybody else. We have to work and pay our bills like everybody else. We are entitled to every other amenity, every other legality, every other part of this country as anybody else. You have foreigners who come in here and get more love than we do. In fact, at some point, we have to decide that we are no longer going to be the victims. And in doing so, there has to be some room for us to prosper and be given more rights, if you will, or the proper rights. But as a people, we first have to stop buying into the narrative. Now, for the sake of argument, before we go, I am going to go back right quick and just show what I had shown in the very beginning so that you get some idea of exactly why um, this is all necessary. And first, I got to find it. Okay, there we go. And we have to decide what part of the game we're going to be a part of. I mean, we cannot continue to allow others to create the narrative for us about who we are. Now, once again, for those of you who came in late, I'm going to show you these photographs. And I'm going to talk again about the feelings and ideas that are solicited when you see this. Your first thought is, oh my God, what are they going to go do? They're criminals. This is what's wrong now. Where are their parents? The list goes on. Look at that. Assault rifle, assault shotgun, handgun, prom. Yep, make you feel some kind of way, don't it? Get you in your feelings. Man, they crazy. Oh, that's not the right way. They shouldn't be doing that. And like I said, I wouldn't let my kids do it because it's tacky as hell. But I'm not knocking these kids for doing this if that's what they feel like doing. Why? Because we live in America. Look at her. Firearms, just one in each hand. Yep. Terrible, isn't it? It's just awful. Oh, my God. Look at that. It actually looked like Memphis. Look, he got his Gucci shoes on, got his Gucci lapels, and a firearm. Got his assault rifles, right? Yeah, oh, man, it's terrible. Yep. But then you see this. Look at the white girl. Oh, she got her shotgun. Okay, yeah, that's cute. Uh-huh. Oh, look at them. Oh, they're so cute. Oh, they look at that. They got camouflage dress and a camouflage vest, and they both got shotguns. Oh, man, that's America. Apple pie. Look at that. Confederate flag, assault rifles, prom. See, how you feel about that? Look at all the little girls with all the assault rifles. Oh, yeah, yeah, uh-huh. That's cute. You see? I guarantee you, whether you will admit it or not, many of you became more at ease when you saw those white people with those guns rather than the black ones. Some of you will admit it, some of you won't. But that's the narrative that we live under. And unless we begin to make that change, this is going to always be an issue. They're no different than these very same Caucasian individuals who have posed for years. This is not new. For years, white folks been doing this. But we want to ostracize our own for doing the same thing. See how conditioning can get us in trouble? Look, y'all, I've said it before on this show. I'm going to say it again today. Y'all want to stop gun violence? You want to get changes in gun laws? I'm going to tell you the only way it'll ever happen in America. Now, y'all listen. It's the only way it's going to ever happen. You want changes in the gun laws. You want to stop people from being able to buy guns. You don't like guns? Go out tomorrow, file for a CCW, that's a concealed carry license, and go buy you some guns. If all black people got up tomorrow and went and did that, I promise you the gun laws would change immediately. And it wouldn't just apply to black people. It would apply to all people. I promise you, if you did that right there, I promise you the gun laws would change immediately. Because the first thing they will be thinking is, what in the hell are they up to? Oh my God. See? See how that works? Let me show you something else. Another one of my favorite points. You want to stop the racism. You want to stop all of the nonsense that goes on with discrimination. Start identifying, I'm talking to black people, start identifying as white. Oh, that sounds ridiculous. Oh, I would never do that. I would never claim to be white. Why not? You got men claiming that they're women and they're legally protected. You got women claiming to be men and they're legally protected. You see where I'm going with this? You can be whatever you want to be nowadays. And according to the law, civilly, you are protected. So guess what? Y'all want to stop all this nonsense? From now on, when you fill out an application for anything, credit card, job, whatever, check the box to say you white. And the minute somebody tries to say, oh, I'm sorry, you checked the wrong box, you're not white, you tell them, oh, yes, I am. And if they try to argue with you, you do realize you have a valid court case, right? You do realize you can take them into court and you can tell the court, this person is violating my civil rights. Because I can identify with anything in any group that I choose, if that's what I choose to do. Because the minute that they say that you can't, guess what that means? Now all of a sudden, all of the people who've had the right to choose what they want to be no longer have that right. They cannot infringe on your right to do that. See, in order to get the kind of changes that we actually need in this country, you got to take a stand. We all do. We have to take a stand equally and together. Whether you agree or disagree, if you want change, you got to do things that cause change. How many times we're going to keep asking for somebody to see us as human? How long are you going to continue to ask for people to protect you from the evil people who want to take you out and take you down? Can't keep asking. It's got to start taking. Valeria Connor says, I did admit because my first thought was, oh my God, the black kids are going to get hurt at prom. See? So true, Brian, you are telling the truth. My family goes to the gun range often. I hear you loud and clear since George Floyd, period. Yes, we made changes for our entire family and we are taking that stand for real. Thank you, Valeria, for that. There is my point. I'm happy that you will admit and have admitted that that is our immediate reaction to something that we shouldn't even be reacting to. The things that we should be reacting to, we don't. And this stuff goes unchecked. See? That's what the black factor's for, y'all. Perspective. I'm here to put things in their proper perspective so that we don't continue to be civilly ignorant, so that we don't continue to allow others to narrate our image and create climates of discomfort and to discourage those who would have us oppressed from doing so. That's what I do. Identify the way you choose and watch how fast things change. That's all I'm saying. So before we go out and condemn these young black folks in their dressed up gear, because like I said earlier, I'm more offended by the way old boy was dressed than I am with the guns. He could have put some clothes on. But we have to be careful about buying into. See, we've allowed the conditioning of the way others have conditioned us to react a certain way. Why? Because we automatically assume that they're going to be outraged, and so we should be outraged too. Wrong answer. Nope. You got to pick your poison, y'all. Pick your outrage. Last example. Bunch of young guys running around up and down the street, pants hanging off their ass. I really wish that trend would die. Oh my God, I'm so sick of that. But while I hate it, I don't think that it should be legislated. They have attempted to put laws in place that said if they caught young men walking down the street with their pants hanging off their ass, they was going to give them a ticket and a fine. Well, we know how that goes. Next, it'll be a ticket, a fine, and they're dead on the sidewalk because they ran from the police because they had their pants hanging off their ass. See, no. While I don't like it, I don't condone it, I also don't believe in this, and you got to remember now, when you don't vote, when you don't make your voice heard civilly, and you buy into civil ignorance, you allow these sorts of laws to go into effect. And then complain later on when some young black man is face down in the gutter, dead at the hands of a police officer because he resisted arrest. Why? Because his pants were hanging off his ass. We have to take back the narrative. That's the necessity. And until that happens, we're going to continue to suffer. And I'm going to say this one last time before I go. The gun laws in America are never going to change. Get that out of your head and start thinking about protecting yourself. Begin thinking about making sure that you have what you need just in case. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Educate your children, the ins and outs, and the necessity of firearms in America. This is where you live. This country is not going anywhere, and unless you are, you're going to have to deal with what this country is about. And this country was founded on three things, baby: violence, religion, and money. You're not going to get around it. You're not going to change it. I don't care how much you vote. I don't care how much any of us vote. Unless we put the people we choose in there, that ain't going to happen. It's just not. You know, I was looking at the thing right quick before I go. I was looking at the stuff going on in Ukraine, and I was looking at these people. When the thing first jumped off, they was throwing fire bombs and Molotov cocktails at tanks and everything and taking them out. But then I got to thinking to myself, if we put ourselves in their position and we are here in America and some foreign entity decided to come to our shores, do y'all realize how much hell anybody that come to this country gonna catch? Do you realize that there are at least 3 guns for every household in America? Do y'all know how many guns that is? Do you know how many people will be on some "we at war, come here if you want to"? It ain't gonna happen, man. No country in their right mind, the only thing they could do was lob a bomb over here and hope they kill enough of us not to fight back. That's one good thing about this country, I can't say. You ain't got to worry about no tanks rolling down the streets of America. That ain't going to happen. Why? Because we are the most heavily armed civilian country in the world. Don't get that twisted. It has its benefits. So, if I were you, I would make sure that I understand how to use, how to carry, what's necessary, just in case. Phyllis Powell says these proms after parties need to stop right now. Too many kids are being killed. You know, Phyllis, the only problem that I have with I can't you can't blame don't blame the parties. Blame those parents whose children have no home training. You know, this gets into another discussion that I struggle with very often. It is unfortunate, and this is how I felt as my own children were growing up. It is unfortunate that we have to send our children, my children, who were educated at home. You know, they say education starts at home. It pains me that I sometimes had to send my children to school with other children that I know whose parents did not prepare them properly. And when I never want to be looking down my nose at other parents. I don't want to be looking down my nose at other kids and thinking, well, we're better than you. But the fact is this. I raised my kids. No, everybody is not equipped, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that you can't tell some people anything because they think they know everything, especially when it comes to their children, having never been parents before having children. Imagine that, because nobody, and when a child is born, you ain't got no instructions. And it's unfortunate that people have all sorts of issues of their own that they project onto their children: shortcomings, depression, low self esteem, and other things of that nature. And these children have to grow up with what's left of you raising them. There are a lot of people who have grown up and are adults now who have been at a great disadvantage. And I feel bad for them. However, blaming or talking about the party is very similar to saying that guns kill people. Nope, because guns don't just jump up and shoot. Somebody has to pull the trigger. Ink pens don't misspell words unless they're in the hands of the ignorant. Cars don't just run over people unless somebody's behind the wheel. People need to raise their children. It's really about as simple as that. And it's unfortunate that we live in a time where so many have basically behaved as a stray dog. They got knocked up, they knocked up somebody and walked away. And these puppies have to raise themselves. These young children are often these days raising themselves. And I feel bad about that. But what can I do? All I can do in my contribution to society is to make sure that my children are productive, understand the rules of the game, the rules of engagement, and be able to move forward and navigate around, through, and over those who have not. Because that is the food chain of America, and you have to decide where you are on that food chain. Either you're eating or you're being eaten. You're either at the table or you're on the menu. And if these people want to see their children on the menu, don't raise them. Let them do it. Leave them to their own devices and see how that work out. And these will be the same ones you'll see on the news hollering about, my baby, he didn't deserve to die, even though he had a pistol stuck in somebody's face before he got shot. This is what happens. This is the world we live in. It is unfortunate. But at some point, regardless of all of the finger pointing and who should be doing what, we all want to survive. It's about survival. It's about living. Because survival is only a small part of what we have to do every day. Living life is more important. You know, I asked my son one time, I said, you know, you can hang around some of your little homies if you choose. I said, but let me tell you something. I said, ask yourself this question. Do you want to be one of the guys who, when your homies call you on a Wednesday and they say, hey man, we going out. Now you got two groups of friends and you choose which one you want to be a part of. And you could be a part of either one. I said, you can be the guys that say, hey man, let's go to the club this weekend. And between the four of y'all, you trying to figure out how to rub together $5 so y'all can get in the club, and who gonna drive and who gonna pay for gas money. I said, or you could be the guy who, when your homie call you on Wednesday, he said, hey man, meet me in Vegas. We're going to roll the felt. Which one do you want to be? You can choose which one of those people you want to be. I'm thankful that he has chosen correctly. But my point is that we have to put these things in front of our children so that they understand the difference. And when we don't perform as we should as adults, we leave our children to the devices of others. How many times have we heard other children use other people that their peers as examples or explanations of what they want to be doing? See, I taught my children not to be followers. My children are leaders. They lead. And they lead themselves. They don't care what the crowd is doing. They do them. Now, that came from what I like to refer to as strong parenting. And I know that everybody is not strong in parenting, but I cannot worry about that when it comes to my own. I have to be where I need to be to make sure that they're going to be okay. And that means teaching them about firearms, when, where, how, why. It's real simple. You know, my daughter made a point one day. She said it's a shame that we live in a society now where even animals take more time to choose a mate than human beings. And we're the ones with brains. We're the ones who have the ability to think about what we're doing. And you have people out here, I'm going to start with the ladies, who choose the weakest man and they have offspring. These men are not there to guide these children. The women sometimes have a lot of misguided ideas about men and about raising boys. And these boys grow up with a lot of feminine energy. And they behave as such in the street. See, back in the day, I expected a woman to be like, I'm going to pick up a gun because I can't fight this dude. He's too strong. I'll pick up a knife and cut his ass because he's too big and he's too strong. Well, now you got boys who think the same thing. Why? Because they're afraid to take an ass whooping. And they're not even sure if they can give one. See, that's feminine energy. Used to be we fought, and most of the time we ended up friends after the fact. But we fought, and we all got a chance to go home and think about what just happened and come back the next day. It wasn't as final as I'm going to kill him because I don't want my ass whooped with a gun. This is where we are now. Then you have men who will go out here and spread that seed anywhere that it's allowed. Now you put the two of them together and what you got? Now you got a kid running around out here that's just like a tumbleweed. Wherever he lands, that's where he is. And they're not given the guidance and information that allows them to prosper in life. Every so often, one of them is smart enough to figure it out on his own at a very early age, and he does that. But more often than not, that's just not the case. So for the parents who know, do right by your children and teach them everything you can. Give them all the information that you can give them. And if you don't have it, find somebody who does, or provide them the venue or the opportunity and point them in the right direction and make sure they get it. And like Michael Wilson Sr. right here said, got to be more careful. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my time. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out. I didn't mean to get into the whole preaching mode at the end, but my point here is that we got to pay more attention to what's going on, y'all, and we got to use our minds and think a little bit longer when we see things like these pictures that trigger us. We cannot be triggered. Think before you speak, think before you act, and then do it again. And you'll be all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Brian Forbes. This has been The Black Factor. I want to thank you all for coming and hanging out with me. I'm going to put that other post up on my page. I want you all to watch it when you get an opportunity. Please watch it. It's very important. It deals with guns, black folks, and the Second Amendment. Have yourselves a great night. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you all next week. Love ya. Peace out, y'all.